I'm a little shocked that you would criticize my mother-in-law. If you're not working, why don't you get out of here? My sister-in-law and mother-in-law, who did not know that I was taking over my mother-in-law's debt, threw these words at me without the slightest sense of gratitude. Yes, I understand. But it's up to you guys from now on. The day I packed my bags, they realized a fact I had been hiding and put their heads together. My name is Emma. I am 32 years old, a busy career woman working in an office in the city. When I was a student, I spent most of my time in the corner of the library absorbed in my books. After I got a job, I was buried under a mountain of work and forgot to take time for myself. One of my friends, who sincerely cared about me, said, "Emma, why don't you try to cherish your love life a little?" And she organized a group blind date for me. Then, a man whose eyes met mine was John, who worked in a building in the city center. He is a fresh salaryman working in a building in the city center. And to my surprise, he seemed to be a little interested in me. I was nervous about the feeling of dating after a long time, but supported by his kind words, we gradually opened our hearts to each other. Then he made a gentle confession to me, and our love accelerated. Only 1 year later, we decided to get married. It was like a dream come true that I, who had been so absorbed in my work, could stand at such a wonderful turning point in my life. My friend who organized the group blind date was also surprised at our sudden development. She said, "Oh, really? You're getting married?" I said, "Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? But it's great. I'm so glad I organized that group blind date. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the wedding. I'm looking forward to it." Thus, I was to open the door to a new life. First, we reported to each other's families. Seeing me so happy, my parents welcomed him warmly. "Emma, you haven't told me about your boyfriend for a long time, so I was a little worried that maybe you wouldn't get married. John, please take care of her from now on." When I heard these words, I felt as if I realized for the first time what my parents really thought of me. I realized that parents think a lot of things without saying them. My family had been basically free to do whatever I wanted, so there was no pressure to get married. But it seems that in my parents' mind, there was a wish to see their daughter happily married someday. Knowing such a parent's wish made my heart warm a little. And when I visited John's house for the first time, I met his family with nervous excitement. But his mother and father were both very warm and made me feel very safe. Next, we had dinner with the whole family. While I was looking forward to it, I was also a little nervous, especially because I had heard that John's sister, Melissa, was there. She was only 25 years old, and her choice of words was a little rough at times, which made me a little confused. She asked me, "Emma, you're already at that age. Weren't you getting married too late?" I was a little shocked to hear her say things like, "I would have decided sooner if I were you." But John followed up and we had a nice dinner afterwards. We then planned our wedding and had a happy wedding at a place we loved. We had a lot of friends and family there, and the day was really great. Our honeymoon was so much fun, and when we returned home, we started our new life together. Life together was fresh, and every day was so much fun. We went out on dates and watched movies at home. I felt that newlyweds are really happy. It has been about 2 years since we got married. One day, our peaceful everyday life changed drastically. We received the news that my father-in-law had passed away. Of course, I knew he had health problems, but I had not expected him to pass away so soon. My husband and I were deeply saddened by this sudden news. My mother-in-law's grief was especially deep, and I could feel her emotions as I looked at her. But our surprise was compounded by what we subsequently found out. In fact, my mother-in-law was in deep debt. It was apparently due to the fact that she had been cheated by some unscrupulous person and lost a large sum of money. When we learned of this fact, we could only gape. My husband, with his usual gentle nature, said he wanted to help her somehow. So, we decided to use our shared savings to reduce my mother-in-law's debt as much as possible. I thought it would be too hard for her to bear that heavy debt alone after my father-in-law's death. However, my mother-in-law's reaction was a little unexpected. She said something like, "If I am in trouble again, can I ask John for help?" My husband was a little surprised and replied, "That's a little." My mother-in-law said something positive, "But I'll find a way to get more money somehow." But my husband was worried. "I hope that's not gambling." We kept a watchful eye on my mother-in-law and were on the lookout for any trouble she might get herself into again. In the midst of all this, my husband was suddenly injured and had to be hospitalized. That event also became a big ordeal for my husband and me. Since every day was spent flitting back and forth from the hospital to take care of my husband, I never noticed any changes in my mother-in-law's daily routine. Then one day, after my husband was discharged from the hospital, I decided to pay a little visit to his parents' home. During our first reunion in a long time, I could sense that something had changed in the atmosphere. "Mom, long time no see." My husband greeted her with a smile, and my mother-in-law said, "John, you are getting better. Can you run again?" She smiled at him and said. While smiling at this exchange, my husband began to flip through my mother-in-law's bank book. To his surprise, the money in his mother-in-law's bank book, which we had accumulated after her previous debts had been repaid, was almost completely gone. "What's wrong with this bank book, Mother?" my husband exclaimed in surprise, to which his mother-in-law replied with a slightly embarrassed smile, "You know, I had tea with friends and found a nice little bag. And then I found myself in this mess." She laughed bitterly. With that one word, my husband and I froze in complete surprise. It was as if we had saved money for our mother-in-law's future, and she had spent it happily without a care in the world. My husband couldn't help but say, "Mom, you shouldn't spend it like this. Do you know how much we put our hearts into giving you money for your future?" He said something like that. Seeing my mother-in-law's remorse, we became truly concerned about her future. We suggested that she move in with us to support her life closer to us. When we broached the subject, my mother-in-law's eyes lit up with joy, and she gave up her house and moved into our apartment. Our new shared life together began, and my mother-in-law seemed to enjoy every day of it. The three of us laughed and talked around the table at every meal, and my mother-in-law volunteered to help with the housework, which made life surprisingly easy for both of us. Her upbeat mood was infectious, and our days became brighter and warmer. I said, "Mom, what would you like for lunch today?" I think I'll have udon." "That sounds good." Since I was working remotely, I was in a position to monitor how my mother-in-law spent her money. Since my husband and I, provided her living expenses and my husband managed my mother-in-law's account, there was supposed to be no worry about her spending excessive money. However, we kept a close eye on her, worried that she might spend the money in some way. These days continued, and in no time at all, 6 months passed. One afternoon, while we were relaxing in the living room, the intercom rang. We wondered who it was, and when I answered, I found my sister-in-law, Melissa, standing there. I said, "Melissa, it's been a while. Is my mother there?" I was a little surprised to hear her ask such a question without even saying hello, but I showed her into the living room. "Mom, it's been a while." "Oh, Melissa, what brings you here?" "I just wanted to see your face once in a while." "Thanks, I'm glad you're here. How are you?" "Of course. I'm fine. John is with me." "So, do you want to go to lunch with me?" "Sure, let's go." Melissa must have taken my mother-in-law to a restaurant or something. We decided to wait at home. When they came home in the evening, we looked at them and their faces changed. Then Melissa said, "Emma, you are tormenting my mother, aren't you?" I was surprised and could not understand what she was saying. My mother-in-law also looked at me sternly. My husband said, "What are you talking about? There is no way Emma would do such a thing." He immediately took my side, but Melissa would not budge. "John is being deceived too." Mom says she can't go outside and she hears Emma is saying things inside the house. We could only be amazed. Indeed, there were times when my mother-in-law would ask to go shopping and we would refuse because she would waste money. Also, my mom said you were taking her money. I had to admit that this statement surprised me. Did my mother-in-law think so, or did Melissa blow it that way? In any case, it seemed that Melissa and my mother-in-law had joined together in accusing me. Now, what do you want from me? I was about to feel like I was bewitched by a fox. What on earth did they want to tell me? I wondered if they just wanted to say something to me. At that moment, my sister-in-law said something I never thought she would say. She said, "I want you to leave our house. I feel like my mother can't really live happily with you. Because I can't believe you treat my mother-in-law so coldly." Her face clouded over. My mother-in-law looked as if she wanted to say something and turned to me. "If you were gone, I would be able to relax and enjoy my time with John and Melissa." I was surprised by her words, but I could not say anything. In fact, they did not know that I had previously paid off her debts for my mother-in-law by cutting into my savings. Looking back, I probably should have made it clear to them at the time that I had not taken it out as our marital savings, but as my own. When I looked at my husband's face, he looked very angry. His hands were clenched and his body was shaking a little. Melissa said, "My mother and I are going to live here together from now on. So, I want you to leave," my sister-in-law said again. Taking a deep breath for a moment, I answered my sister-in-law, "I understand, but I won't get involved in what happens next." After that exchange, my husband and I decided to leave the house. And on the day we moved out, they were surprised to discover one truth. "Looks like you've made arrangements to move out right away after all." "Yes, I have something to tell Melissa." "Yes, what is it?" My husband chuckled and said, "Actually, I'm getting older and I was thinking that I should put the house in Melissa's name." My sister-in-law's eyes sparkled and she said, "Really? It's going to be my house?" she said excitedly. My husband quietly produced the documents for the change of name and said, "As long as you sign here, that's all right." My sister-in-law happily said, "I can't believe I have my own apartment," and signed it. My husband and I looked at each other stealthily and exchanged smiles at the success of our plan. "Well, it's time to start getting ready to leave." "What, John? Are you really leaving?" "Yes, I've decided to leave too." "Oh, even John is leaving? Do you really have to leave with Emma?" "If I'm not with Emma, I don't feel comfortable either. It's normal for married couples to be together." "I knew you would say that, but then what are we going to do about future house expenses and stuff?" "That's something you'll have to devise and pay for on your own." "Wait a minute. I quit my job because I believed you would support me, okay?" My husband and I could not hide our surprise at my sister-in-law's sudden statement. "If you keep this up, you're going to get me and our mother into a lot of trouble." "That's fine if you can devise a way to live on your own. You have our mother's pension, and if you save a little, you can manage." "Yes, and if you add my pension to that, we can manage. Since you're going to live here, we need to be creative about it." My sister-in-law looked a little satisfied with my mother-in-law's kind words. "Indeed. It's my new home. If I save a little money, I should be able to get by." However, my husband and I laughed inwardly at my sister-in-law saying such a thing, not knowing that the property was a rental. About that time, the movers arrived. We welcomed them and began to move more and more stuff out. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law rolled their eyes at the sight. "What are you doing?" "Getting ready to move out." "Are you taking everything?" "Of course. We bought all this stuff." "Do I have to buy everything new?" "That's right. I wish you had known that and acted accordingly." "Well, we better get going." My husband smiled and said, and we left the house. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law froze in amazement for a while. After a while, my sister-in-law called my husband's cell phone. She said, "Hey, John, what's with the rent bill all of a sudden?" I was a little mistaken. Could it be that I am not the owner of this house? Who told you about that? Well, I'm actually renting this house. The document you signed at that time, which was the rental agreement. So, it's only natural that you should be charged for the rent. Seriously, I didn't know that at all. It's where you live, so you have to pay the rent. But my salary is not that much compared to you. You may laugh, but Emma actually makes more money than I do. Oh, no. It's true. She is working hard at a remote company that pays pretty well. That's why we were able to live so comfortably in that apartment. My sister-in-law was so surprised that she was speechless for a while. Next, I heard my mother-in-law's worried voice. "We're so sorry," she said. "I'm really sorry. Could you please reconsider and come back?" My husband responded gently but firmly. "Thank you, mother, but it's hard for me to go back because of your attitude toward Emma. She is the most important to me. Please take care of the rest. You will take care of it." After that exchange, I heard various rumors. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law had apparently been forced to look for an apartment after getting tripped up on rent payments. They are now trying to make do in a small apartment that is barely big enough for the two of them to live in, but it is said that they are having financial problems and occasional fights. They are also concerned about the neighbors' eyes on them. John and I have started a new life in our new house. Every day is fun and full of happiness. At long last, the day has come when I don't have to see your face anymore. Freeloaders who just eat without working should get out. You should be thankful for being allowed to be a freeloader all this time. Understood. I won't come back. Thank you for everything up to now. I quickly packed what I needed and left my in-laws' place, where I had been living for many years. My mother-in-law looked very pleased as she watched me leave. However, only I know a certain sad truth. I know what's going to happen to this house. My name is Sarah. I'm 32 years old and I work from home. I've been married to my husband Alan for 5 years. We had a peaceful life as a couple, but things changed in our 4th year of marriage. My normally healthy father-in-law suddenly became ill and needed care. That's how we started living with my in-laws. I didn't agree with the idea of living with them so soon, but my husband is an only child, with no other family for my in-laws to rely on. We ended up taking care of my father-in-law. I thought about quitting my job if it were necessary for his care, but based on my past performance, my company allowed me to continue working remotely. Trouble with my in-laws started right away. Yes, I experienced the so-called mother-in-law and daughter-in-law problem too. "Sarah, hurry up and take care of the cooking and cleaning. How long are you going to be lazy and avoid your housework?" "Mother-in-law, I'm working right now." "What are you talking about? You're always just clicking away on the computer. The truth is, you're just browsing the internet, not really working, right?" Thinking that using the computer equates to playing around on the internet is so outdated. I have permission to work from home from my company. In between the household chores and caring for my father-in-law, I've used my skills to get back to the salary I was earning before. And after about 3 months of hard work, when I finally managed to bring my salary back to the amount before, I felt a real sense of joy. As for the reason that I worked so hard, the truth is, Alan's salary isn't enough for us to make ends meet. I had thought that life was finally going to get easier. I even thought about starting to put money away. But for some reason, things just kept getting harder. It felt like the contents of my wallet just kept dwindling. Suspicious, I looked into where the money was going and found out that Alan had been spending a lot. I also learned that my mother-in-law was terribly wasteful with money. Alan has always been a people pleaser, often treating his juniors at work to lunch. But lately, it seems that he's also been using our credit cards to treat people to drinking parties as well. It doesn't matter how much I earn. If Alan uses more than that, our finances will inevitably dwindle. As for my mother-in-law, she's balancing multiple hobbies with her friends, generously paying the lesson fees and socializing afterwards. I can't stand the fact that my husband and mother-in-law continue their wasteful spending. leaving all the housework and care for my father-in-law up to me. I've ended up having to cover all our living expenses with my income, making saving money a dream. Feeling anxious about this problem, I decided to talk to my husband and mother-in-law. Ellen and mother-in-law, it seems like we've been spending quite a lot lately. If this continues, we'll run out of money. Could you please try to cut back on your expenses? Ellen and my mother-in-law reacted harshly to my words. I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to be seen as stingy in front of my colleagues and subordinates. You can understand that, right? They won't think you're stingy just because there are times where you don't pay for them. There's no need to treat them every single time. You don't seem to understand, but for work to go smoothly, you have to keep good relationships with your coworkers. Treating your juniors to lunch is one thing, but what about the trips to the girls' bars? That has nothing to do with work, right? You just want to have fun, don't you? How did you? You come home drunk and start talking about it even if no one asks you. That just means he has a more enjoyable time there than spending time with you. I'm glad that mom understands. And she's right, laughs. And as for me, if I didn't go to my classes, I'd just be cooped up at home. I'm taking classes with my friends to enjoy the limited time I have left in this world. What a terrible daughter-in-law I have. All you do is the housework, and you don't earn anything, so you have no right to complain. Really though, what is she thinking? A homemaker looking down on us from her high horse. I'm telling you, I'm working. I'm earning a steady income and contributing to this household. I'm also doing housework and taking care of father-in-law. Don't lie. Working from home, you can't be earning that much. Mother is the one doing the caregiving. Don't act so high and mighty for a part-timer. I was so appalled by what I was hearing, I couldn't even reply. They didn't seem to understand that I was balancing the housework with caregiving, all while earning a steady income. Moreover, it seemed that my mother-in-law had told Alan that she was the one taking care of my father-in-law, making it sound like I was a homemaker who did nothing. There were several times when I thought about leaving that house. I did consider it, but the reason I ended up staying was because of my father-in-law. Ever since I got married, my father-in-law always treated me very kindly, unlike Alan and my mother-in-law. And he always told me things like this. Sarah, I'm grateful to have a wonderful daughter-in-law like you. I'm sorry for everything. Father-in-law, I don't find it hard to care for you. Why would you say that? Of course I feel bad asking you to take care of me like this. But more than that, I feel terrible about my wife and son. Everything's been left to you, and they do as they please, right? Yes, that's right. I realize that it's thanks to your hard work that our household finances are being kept afloat. Ellen's income alone wouldn't be enough to maintain this household. Father-in-law, you knew all this time? It seemed that father-in-law had understood our family's situation for quite some time, and every time he received care, he would show his appreciation with heartwarming words. I truly loved such a father-in-law and even came to enjoy caring for him. What would happen to this house if I left? I had anxiety about who would take care of my beloved father-in-law, so I decided to be the one to provide proper care until passed away. A year later, my father-in-law left this world. During the funeral for my beloved father-in-law, I couldn't stop the tears. Sarah, why are you crying so much? What? Father-in-law has passed away. Isn't mourning like this natural? I've been his caregiver all this time. My response seemed to infuriate my mother-in-law. You make it sound as if I never took care of him at all. The truth is, my mother-in-law hardly took care of my father-in-law. She was always busy with her hobbies, going out all the time. Since I was home, she didn't need to do any caregiving or housework. She even put on a tearful act in front of the relatives, as if she were the oppressed and pitiful mother-in-law. To outsiders, it probably seemed as if I was the cruel daughter-in-law. They would defend her, saying, "Don't be so hard on mother-in-law," and blame me instead. Even though I was just mourning my father-in-law's death, I was being criticized by people who understood nothing, which made me angry. I decided to distance myself from the relatives. That's when Alan took notice of me and came over to complain. You embarrassed mom in front of everyone? What are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. I was only crying about father-in-law's death. Despite that, your mom came over and told me it was strange for me to cry. Didn't you make it sound like she hadn't taken care of dad at all? I never said such a thing. I just talked about mourning the loss of my father-in-law, whom I had always cared for. Perhaps it sounded like criticism to you because, in reality, your mom did nothing. Are you insulting mom? I'm not insulting anyone. I'm just stating the facts. And by the way, if it bothers you so much, you could have done more to care for father-in-law too. If you're so upset about it, you should have cared for him yourself. What business is it of yours? Why are you criticizing me? How can it be none of my business? It's only natural that you, his blood relative, would take care of him. I'm working for this family. Taking care of the house or relatives are wife duties. That's absurd. Don't be so ridiculous. I'm working too, you know. Our argument escalated, and the relatives had to intervene. Although they stopped our argument, I didn't speak to my husband at all after that. Once all the funeral proceedings were finished, a lawyer came to explain the inheritance. I'd like to discuss the contents of the will regarding your late father's estate. First, to the wife and the daughter-in-law, Sarah, he's left half of his cash to each of you. And to his son, Alan, he's left ownership of the family land and home. What? If Alan gets the land and the house, doesn't that mean all the other assets go to the wife? Why is Sarah receiving an inheritance? I'm his wife. Your husband was deeply grateful to Sarah for the dedicated care that she gave him. He wanted to give her part of the inheritance as a sign of his gratitude. As this is the decision he made, it cannot be changed. I can't believe it. Oh, I get it. You were caring for him just to get the inheritance, weren't you? How could you think that? That has to be it. Otherwise, there's no way you could have been so devoted to him despite not being related by blood. I had a good relationship with my father-in-law ever since I got married. I took care of him to express my gratitude for that. Are you saying that you tried to let me, someone who isn't related by blood, take care of your own husband? Isn't that like psychological abuse? Don't be ridiculous. Fine, I won't bring it up anymore. Appearing frustrated that she couldn't say anything else inappropriate in front of the lawyer, my mother-in-law continued. So, that was Dad's decision. It's gratitude for Sarah's caregiving, right? If that's the case, then we have no choice but to follow it. May I continue? All right, well, your father stated that it's no longer necessary to rely on Sarah. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law's face, which had been dissatisfied just moments ago, suddenly broke into a smile. Yes, that's great. I understand. Huh? What do you mean? My mother-in-law seemed pleased, but my husband was confused. He didn't seem to understand what she was saying. So, in the end, Sarah's inheritance is nothing more than severance pay. It's not gratitude at all. Now that Dad's caregiving is over, we don't need Sarah in this house anymore. My mother-in-law had misunderstood my father-in-law's will, just as intended. The truth is, my father-in-law had discussed this with me before. My father-in-law wanted me to be free from this house after he passed away. He used the will to cleverly deceive my husband and mother-in-law, making it seem natural that I should leave. And just as my father-in-law had planned, my mother-in-law, completely misunderstanding his true intentions, saw the will as a chance to kick me out. Pretending to be shocked by the will, so as not to let on that I actually wanted to leave, I said, "Father-in-law, why would you treat me like this? See, even to Dad, you were just someone that would take care of him. Ellen, you can't understand Sarah anymore, right? Why don't you just divorce her? Ellen, you'll still stay married to me, right?" As I looked at Alan with tears in my eyes, he thought about it for a while and then said, "You know what? Let's get a divorce. I've inherited the family home and land, and Mom got some money too. There's no longer any need to worry about caregiving, so there's no problem if Sarah goes." What do you mean by that? Just what I said. I feel bad for asking, but could you leave our house and agree to the divorce? Understood. I guess there's no place for me here anymore. Saying such with a bit of restraint, I took a document out of the drawer and handed it to my husband. After that time we fought, I went and got this. No mistake, the document was a notice of filing for divorce. My husband promptly signed it. Finally, I don't have to deal with you anymore. A non-working freeloader should just get out. Laughs. You should be grateful for us having put up with you. A total freeloader. Is that so? Okay, I understand. I'll leave. Thank you for things up to now. By the way, since the lawyer is here, I want to check one thing. It's okay that I don't get any more than what I've already received from father-in-law's estate, right? Of course. You seem to have gotten a bit smarter, Sarah. You've been living off me until now. So don't even think about squeezing any more money out of me. Well, I suppose you're right. All right, it's settled then. Please make yourself disappear quickly. I promptly packed my things and left my in-laws' house. Watching me leave, my mother-in-law looked as pleased as could be. They had no idea what would happen to this house in the future. After leaving my in-laws' house, I immediately submitted the divorce notice to City Hall. And when I arrived at the apartment I had rented in advance, I couldn't help but shout out loud in the spacious room, "Finally, I can be by myself. This is great." I was overwhelmed with joy to be freed from such a difficult marriage, and I was truly grateful to my father-in-law for devising the plan to help me escape my in-laws' home. Afterwards, I enjoyed a comfortable life living on my own, because I was able to get used to working remotely while living at my in-laws' place. I had become better at managing my time and work went smoothly. Thanks to that, my income increased and I was living a comfortable life without anyone bothering me. Until one day, my ex-husband Alan called me. "It's been a while. Why are you calling me? We're in a pinch. Sarah, please help us." "What kind of joke is this? Weren't you the ones who told me to disappear?" "My salary hasn't changed, but for some reason, we're running out of money. We can't live like this." "Oh dear," laughs. "That's a problem, isn't it?" I decided to deliver the final blow. "That's because you no longer have my income to support you." "Huh? What do you mean? You still don't get it? Didn't you notice while living so lavishly that your salary alone was not enough?" I had thought that we could live on my salary alone, but you're telling me that's not the case? Of course. You squandered your entire salary on yourself. We only got by because I was the one paying for our living expenses. Maybe it's about time you and your mother learned some financial responsibility as adults? That's How much were you making then? Let's see. At that time, I was making about $4,800 a month, maybe? That's more than me. That's right. You didn't know, did you? By the way, now I'm earning even more than that, with no one to get in my way, laughs. Even through the phone, I could clearly feel my husband's frustration. "Hey, Sarah, can't we start over?" "Eh? It was a mistake to let you go. I want to make things right again." "Huh? It's obvious you're after my income. Are you stupid?" "That's not true. I still love you, Sarah. Don't be ridiculous. I never want to see your face again. By the way, what happened to the inheritance your mother received? With that amount, she should be living comfortably, right? That's the thing. It's about to run out. That's impossible. It was nearly $100,000, right? That's not an amount you can use up in just a few months. Mom and I spent it on shopping sprees, overseas trips, and half of it disappeared in the casino. A foolish mother breeds a foolish son. I have nothing more to say to you. Besides, I'm a stranger now, so I can't do anything for you, and I don't want to. Don't be so heartless. Help me. This has nothing to do with me. There's nothing more to talk about, so I'm hanging up. Don't call me again. Saying this, I ended the call on my end and promptly canceled the contract for the mobile phone I was using. What became of my ex-husband and mother-in-law afterward is none of my business, and I do not know. However, about a year after that call, I passed by my mother-in-law's house and it had become an empty lot. They probably had to let go of the house due to financial reasons. Well, it's really none of my business anyway. As for me, with my newfound spare time, I started going to a wine class that I had been interested in for some time. There, I met a man 2 years my senior who took me seriously, and after dating for a year and a half, we got married. He is the ace of a well-known company that many people are aware of, and despite his high salary, he is humble with a warm and wonderful character. He respects my career, and we enjoy a fulfilling married life filled with mutual respect. These days, I feel that maybe all this retribution was a gift from my father-in-law. From now on, we're going to take care of the house by ourselves. So, go live somewhere else, my brother and his wife said. My mother was in agreement with them, as if I were an obstacle. Do they understand who has been paying for the living expenses of the house? I never thought they would be disrespectful like this. In the back of my mind, I made up my mind to take certain actions. My name is Carrie. I am a 30-year-old woman. Currently, I am living back at my parents' house. After graduating from college, I joined a company to try to make it on my own in the outside world, but it was harder than I had imagined and my heart was exhausted. Therefore, I had to return to my parents' home again. At first, while receiving unemployment benefits, I was looking for new job opportunities. Then I learned about work-at-home jobs and started working independently. My university major was in a scientific field, so I could utilize my skills as a freelance engineer. I started with small projects at first. Although the income was small, the experience of working from home was very meaningful. Unlike most companies, I was able to earn enough money without having to interact with people as much, and I gradually gained confidence in my ability to work at my own pace. Then, I worked steadily at my job. Gradually, I began to be entrusted with larger projects, and my income started to rise. After about a year, I was earning as much as a regular company employee. But the trouble is, my parents, especially my mother, didn't really understand me working at home. My father was convinced when I explained in detail, but my mother was a bit old-fashioned in her thinking and was afraid of what she didn't understand. No matter how many times I explained that I take my job seriously, she would end up saying things like this: "How long are you planning on staying home?" At first, I thought it was for your mental health, but it's been over 2 years now. You should try working outside more. I tried to explain in all sincerity, but my mother did not quite understand. My mother said, "You're just doing something online." She was often suspicious of me. How could I make her understand? No matter how much I tried to explain, my mother would not be convinced. I showed her emails from clients and my salary statements, but no matter how much I tried, she would not accept my lifestyle. My mother said, "Isn't that some kind of shady business or religion you're involved in?" That's not true. I receive my payments regularly, and it's a reliable job. I explained, but my mother would not budge. There's always the possibility that it's unemployment benefits, right? And it's not like you can receive them forever. My mother's worries were endless. I had considered living on my own, but I had not yet saved enough money to do so. Around that time, my father's legs and back deteriorated and he needed nursing care. My father retired early and faced a sudden loss of income. "Dad, are you okay?" "Oh, Carrie, I'm sorry to worry you, but I've got my pension, so I'll make it work." I thought about it, but considering how much Mother spends, are you sure you can handle it? Either way, I guess we'll just have to make do with what we have in savings. My father's face was quite tired. Perhaps he was feeling anxious about the future. For a long time, I attended college with my father's financial support. Furthermore, I have been living with my father's help even when I returned to my parents' home after suffering from mental health problems. Is it really a good idea to leave my father alone and continue to live on my own? My mother was also confused by my father's sudden condition. I stayed home and felt I might be able to give something back. "Don't worry, Dad. I'll support the family from now on." "Oh, really?" my father said in surprise. "But I can't imagine you have that much income." "Don't worry, Dad. My current income is quite stable." I showed my father my bank account information. My father had always understood my situation. So, I believed he would be convinced. Carrie, I didn't know you were so solid. Yeah, I've been getting more income lately. Then, can you help us out a little? Of course. You've done so much for us, so I'll support you from now on. Thank you, Carrie. This led me to support the living expenses of the house, my father's medical bills, and many other expenses. I would transfer a certain amount of money to my father's bank account each month to help with the household expenses. Since my mother had been using my father's credit card for some time, I created a new main card and gave the supplementary card to my mother. My father saved as much as he could and asked my mother to do the same to save money. My mother said, "What? Then should we kick Carrie out of this house? Carrie is contributing financially. It's going to be a lot harder without her." Is that true? My mother was not convinced. She was also suspicious about my support. My father convinced my mother, and she finally agreed to let me live with her. I then continued to work while helping out at home. My mother took my help for granted and was very strict with me. "Can't you finish your chores faster?" "Sorry, it's not easy because I'm also working at the same time." "You keep saying that, but is it really that difficult?" My mother did not understand and did not listen to me. I realized that my relationship with my mother was becoming irreparable. My father understood what I was doing, and that helped more than anything. And we continued to live this way for a year. However, one day, after 1 year had gone by, my father suddenly fell ill and had to be hospitalized. Every day, I went to visit my father in the hospital. "Hey, Dad, how are you today?" "Oh, thank you, Carrie. It doesn't look like it's going to get better anytime soon, but I hope it's a little less of a burden for you." "Don't think that way. Taking care of you wasn't a burden for me, but I know that you and Mom haven't been getting along." "Well, that's a little." After my father was hospitalized, the relationship between my mother and I deteriorated further. I felt suffocated at times living with my mother. But don't worry. Nevertheless, I still wanted to support my father and mother as a family. I was especially grateful when I recalled how my mother made my lunchbox every day when I was a student and how she put effort for dinner every night. But then, something that changed my mind completely happened. My mother said to my brother Kevin, "I've been waiting for you." "You're late." "Sorry, Mom. I've been a little busy." "Hi, mother-in-law." "Hi, Mary. Thank you for coming." I was too surprised to say anything. Then, I approached my brother Kevin and his wife Mary, and they looked at me with a cold stare. Suddenly, my brother told me somehow, "We're going to live here from now on too." "What? Why?" Mom was worried. She thought it might be a bit tough for you to live here alone while Dad's not around. "I see." In surprise, I turned to my mother, but my mother looked away. My brother said, "I hope this will make Mom feel a little better." "We'll support you, Carrie," my brother's wife said with a smirk, but I had a feeling that there was another meaning hidden in those words. My mother said, "Thank you, both of you. Carrie, I hope you're willing to do a little work. Otherwise, it might be hard for you to stay in this house." This topic again. Although, it was unexpected that my brother and his wife were invited to this house. My brother graduated from a fine college and worked for a solid company. I'm sure he earned an ample amount of salary, but I was also working hard in my own way. Could they manage even without me? A new life began at home. Living with my brother and his wife turned out to be more challenging than I had imagined. "Carrie, aren't you up yet? Wake up and make breakfast." My brother's wife yelled, banging on my door. "I'm already up. I'm working early." Truly, I was fully awake and in full work mode. As a morning person, this was the most focused time of the day for me. I wanted to spend that time of day without anyone disturbing me. "Really? Then get on with it and get breakfast ready." "Oh, do I have to make everything by myself?" Our family was usually free in the morning and we ate what we wanted, when we wanted. My mother and my brother's wife were both home, and if it was for my brother, I thought it would be normal for his wife to prepare it for him. My sister-in-law said we're going to live together, so we need to cooperate, right? I forced myself to help them prepare breakfast, but the three of them didn't seem satisfied. Is this what you prepared for breakfast? This isn't enough. I prepared a breakfast plate of soft scrambled eggs, a refreshing lettuce salad, fresh buttered toast, and a juicy sausage. I thought a breakfast like this would be pretty good, but did I miss something? Then you don't have to eat it. Hearing this, the three of them looked surprised. What? What's with that attitude? Who do you think you are? This attitude is unacceptable. You should help with the housework, but I have work to do too. Oh, work, really? I can't believe it. What kind of work is that? Are you crazy? My brother and his wife questioned my words and cussed at me. My brother, in particular, tended to constantly look down on me. Probably influenced by my mother, he made fun of me. Still, this would take up a lot of my work time. I headed to my room, put my laptop in my bag, and left the house. Wait, where are you going? I ignored my brother's voice and strode to my father's hospital room. As I ran into my father's hospital room, he looked at me with a surprised expression. Carrie, what's wrong? You seem flustered. I explained to my father what had just happened. My father looked at me with a look of surprise on his face. My father said I didn't know they were. I'm sorry, Carrie. Don't worry about it, all right? You can choose your own way of life. I was lost. I'm sure your mother would feel more comfortable if Kevin were home. You don't need to be in a place where you don't feel comfortable. All I want is for you to live happily. So live your life the way you want to live, all right? Thank you, Father. With my father's encouragement, I decided to leave home. When I returned home in the evening, a scene like a movie was waiting for me. The faces of my mother, brother, and sister-in-law were serious. Where were you? Brother, weren't you at work? Because of you, I had to take the day off. How could you take a day off for such a reason? Inwardly, I was surprised at how easily my brother took time off work. Wasn't that too irresponsible? Gradually, the tone of my brother and his wife's voice escalated. Get out of here. That's what he said. Why? I replied calmly in surprise. From now on, the three of us will live together. So, if you don't want to stay, please leave. We don't need an overbearing presence like you to support us. My brother and his wife tried to kick me out of the house. Carrie, that's enough. You don't need to be here now that your father is not here. For some reason, my mother, like my brother and his wife, said that I was a hindrance. Did she know how involved I was in this family's finances? My mother bought branded goods every month, but what would she do when her allowance was reduced? I was very angry. My mother, brother, and sister-in-law ignored my story no matter how many times I explained it to them. I think they were a little too rude. I couldn't take it any longer. I thought and came up with a little ruse. First, I transferred the money in the bank account linked to the credit card my mother used every day to another account that I managed. I thought this would surprise my mother a little when she could no longer use her credit card. In addition, I transferred some money from my father's account, which supported the family finances in a similar fashion. Only my father's medical expenses could be paid out of his separate account. My mother did not know about this bank account. As a result, a large portion of the family's finances fell on the shoulders of my brother and his wife. I didn't know the details of my brother's income situation, but I was sure he would feel the burden more than ever. After I had completed all the formalities, I packed up my belongings and said, I'm leaving this place. My mother, brother, and sister-in-law looked surprised at these words. They had been harassing me so much, but they didn't think I would actually take action. But when I looked at their faces, they seemed to be enjoying themselves. You're finally leaving. I've never seen such a troublesome person. You're not coming back, aren't you? I couldn't believe they were belittling me to no end. Of course not. Don't contact me. They smiled at me when I left the house. But what would they think after I left home? I smiled at them in my heart and started a new life. My new house was peaceful and I could enjoy my own time. I felt completely refreshed and was able to concentrate on my work. Then one day, as expected, I received a call from my brother. I told you not to contact me. What's wrong? Hey, is it true that you were the one who did all the money transactions in our family home? My brother's voice was filled with surprise and urgency. Oh, that. Yes, that's right. Why are you asking now? Why didn't you tell me? We had no idea. Well, I did mention several times that I was working, but neither you nor Mom believed me, right? Well, Mom said a lot of things, and I was a little confused. So that's not my fault, right? No, it's not, but I'm having a problem with money. Mom's been spending quite a bit, and on top of that, we haven't been able to pay the house utilities and stuff. Yes, I was able to do it because I was supporting you in so many ways. I'm not home anymore, so you have to do it. Carrie, I need your help to transfer some money to my bank account. What? I beg you, can you transfer some money over now? You must be joking. You're working for a big company. Isn't that how you make a living? Well, actually, I got fired from that company. What? Why? I made a big mistake. Was that before you moved back to our parents' house? My brother's reply left me speechless. I guessed correctly. My brother may have come back to my parents' house thinking that there was enough money in the house. He probably thought he would be able to get by with a solid pension coming in after my father retired. I wanted to tell my brother that I was supporting the family finances, even though it looked like I was doing nothing. It was amusing to imagine the look of surprise on my brother's face when he learned that I was supporting the household finances, as he had assumed that the household finances were stable. And the same was true of my brother's wife and mother. My brother's wife told Mekari, "We need your help. We're about to run out of savings." My mother also said your father is really upset about this. He says he won't contribute money to the household finances anymore. We're in such a bad situation. You know what? I've supported you enough. You are all healthy, so work hard and support yourselves. I'll cheer you on. I heard a terrified voice on the other end of the phone. Reflect on your actions so far. I'm hanging up now, so don't contact me. But Carrie, wait a minute. I then distanced myself from my brother, his wife, and my mother. My father also felt that he could no longer return to his life with my mother and consulted a lawyer. My father changed hospitals and was living quietly in a different place. Thankfully, I could visit him every day. One of my friends informed me about my brother's recent situation. He had moved into a small apartment and seemed to be living each day frugally. My mother, who had been a homemaker for a long time, seemed to be struggling with her sudden job. My brother, too, seems to find it difficult to listen to the opinions of the younger staff, perhaps because of his confidence as a college graduate, and his part-time job didn't last long. Among them, my brother's wife was the only one who worked hard to support the family finances, but it seemed she couldn't bear the pressure and went away. So, my brother and mother are now working hard together, apparently. However, my mother's habit of overspending has not changed, and her debts are increasing. I am worried about her, but I can no longer help her. I am now working hard in a comfortable living space. I am gradually getting more money, and I am thinking of trying something new. I want to visit my father every day and spend more time with him because I want to see more of his cheerful smile.